Yeah.
Loves his daddy.
He does.
He loves his daddy.
He does. He loves his daddy.
Oh, there's the boy. Look how he's showing off his muscles. Yeah, he's like, yeah, yeah. Don't find a cuter baby, huh? Just a show off, huh? Yeah. Mellow, but dangerous. Yeah, you know what they say. You gotta watch out for the mellow one.
Yeah. So guys, we met Tanika about 5 years ago when we were starting our IVF journey. She was one of the YouTubers that Ricki and I were able to hear and watch because she had a similar diagnosis to ours, which is age-related infertility. And so we really know deep in our heart that Tanika is one of the reasons we have Bubbah here today, our own genetic child, because a lot of what we used to watch was when Tanika was going through her IVF journey with her own eggs. And so her resilience, her persistence, her advocacy, her tenacity, and her York Carrie Bradshaw drive in New York as she walked up those streets going for cycle after cycle with her own eggs was truly a motivation for us as we underwent our 12 IVF cycles. And so I can't even believe the person that I like to call the Oprah of Infertility was open to doing a collaboration, because when we became successful with Bubbah right here, we knew that we needed to spread the word. Yeah. Right, Bubbah? Spread the word. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Kay. Hi, Rick. How are you? Hello to Simba. 2 kisses, little man. I am so excited to be doing this collab. Thank you for having me on. I love your channel, as you know. Well, first let me introduce myself for your viewers who may not know me. My name is Tanika. I'm known as Simply Tanika here on YouTube, aka the fertility fairy godmother. And I am currently 8 weeks, 2 days pregnant as I am recording this. I don't know when this is gonna post, but I'm 8 days, 2 days pregnant when I'm recording it. I am so grateful to you and your channel. I watched your videos diligently during my recent 2-week wait that is led to Baby M, or Boss Baby as the viewers on my channel are calling the baby, the fertility fam. There were so many threads of hope that you gave me throughout my journey, and I'm just so grateful. One of the things was like to enjoy the moments, to celebrate the moments, and that was so important because I have an anxiety disorder, and so sometimes I can get caught up in like what might be, what could be, and I'm meant to focus on things that I can control. And so when you were saying to celebrate the moments, that was something I could control, and that was very, very powerful to me. So thank you for that. But enough about all that. I know that you have questions for me, so I want to respect your time and get to the questions.
Tanika, you gave inspiration to my wife time and time again. Even from New York, when I know it was extremely cold, we had to keep going, because if you could do it in the cold, then we could do it in the warmth.
Exactly, particularly in LA, right?
Particularly in LA.
Exactly. So here are some questions that Ricki and I and Bubbah are going to ask. First question we have for you, Tanika, is that IVF is a journey that is fueled by hope and faith. How did you navigate this journey through all the uncertainty and all the failures?
IVF is indeed a journey for hope and faith. I think This journey has strengthened my faith. I was raised Catholic. We're kind of modest on our religion, and sharing my story on the internet, I've been introduced to people from lots of different religions and how they celebrate and honor that religion. And so I think I've become more vocal about my faith. I think it's deepened my faith and taught me that it's okay to talk about it out loud with perfect strangers. And so I just felt in my soul that if it was meant to be, it would be. And I always, from the very beginning, have said, let God's will be done. And that kind of like was very freeing for me. Of course, there are times where I question God and I was like, come on, come on. But I definitely deepened my faith throughout this process. Again, not being able to control the outcome, right? And so letting go and focus on what I could control, and I could control my faith. I could control what I believed. And so that is what I focused on.
Hey, Tanika, get ready for the second question. Once I'm asking it, you know it's going to be in depth. You maximized and navigated 2 pathways to baby, own eggs and donor. How did you make the transition, and what tips do you have for others who might face the same choice? It's a very good question, and a lot of people are facing this journey.
In order to maximize 2 choices, it was a bit tricky. So first of all, I started this journey, I was 46 when I started. And unfortunately, I started with IUIs, which were a complete waste of time. Had I to do it over again, I would have started with IVF sooner. So in 2017, was doing IUIs. I did not have my first egg retrieval until the end of 2018, like the day after Thanksgiving, literally, I had my first egg retrieval in 2018. At first, honestly, I was against donor eggs. It just seemed very odd to me. I didn't hear a lot of people talking about it. It just wasn't my jam. And I felt like I was doing enough research that I could still make my own eggs work. I probably, honestly, in retrospect, was 2 years too late, right? Like, I think at 44, I would have had a better chance than 46. And then I did my first retrieval at 46. And then I did my second one at 47. The 46-year-old egg made it, implanted, it ended in a miscarriage. And then the second one, the 47-year-old egg, did not make it to blast, or it made it to blastocyst, and then arrested is what they told me. It arrested and stopped growing. So I was still naive enough, or stubborn enough, or whatever adjective you want to use, to believe that I could still try with my own eggs. I have been doing a lot of research on supplements and enhancing the quality of the eggs, right? I was focused on quality and not quantity. I thought, well, I'm going to continue on with my own eggs. That was 2019. Yeah, 2019. Oh, the pandemic. My mother got cancer, so I went to California at the beginning of 2020. And I left in February. The pandemic hit in March. I did not come back to New York until I came back to New York in the summer. The clinics were still closed at that point. At that time, I thought, well, I will do donor eggs and I will do my own eggs. I'll do them in tandem, right? And so that way I'm not, quote unquote, wasting any time, because if my eggs don't work, then I have the donor eggs as a backup. As it got closer to selecting the donor eggs, and I realized how expensive it was going to be, because I have benefits, they would cover part of the donor egg, like they would cover the retrieval. They were meant to cover the meds, but the way that the clinic billed, it didn't end up being that way. I guess I could try and do like a reimbursement now, but it doesn't matter. So, but I had to pay $20,000 in admin fees out of pocket for the donor egg part. And so that was kind of a deal breaker for me. So I opted not to do another retrieval of my own and then just go to donor eggs. So that's kind of the semantics of it all. And it sounds a little bit cut and dry, but there's a very much an emotional part about it. And I think once you move from your own egg to donor egg situation, there is a grieving process that nobody really talks about, because it is a loss. You are losing an idea, if nothing else. And you will still become a parent. You will still become a mom. You're just not going to become a mom in the way that you originally thought you were. And it's okay to grieve that. And so I think that is important to acknowledge that loss. Otherwise, it's going to keep popping up. So that's, I don't know if that answers the question or not, but that's kind of like how I navigated it. Ultimately came down to a financial decision once I made the decision to move to donor eggs. I think that was probably the biggest hurdle because I had resisted it for so long. Mainly because when doctors tell you that you have to go to donor eggs, it's more like, and maybe it's just my own interpretation, it's more like, well, you're just too old. Like, duh, you need to go to, and it's just very cut and dry. Like, it's not a conversation about how you're going to become a parent, but in a different way. And it's okay to grieve, you know? It's just, I don't know, it just felt dismissive. So hopefully that answers your question.
All right, I'm going to ask one now. And I think Bubbah's ready to read it and ask it himself. IVF that includes multiple cycles can take a toll on mental and physical health. How do you exercise self-care through this process amidst your cycles over the years?
I am going to be honest, I did not practice self-care in the beginning. Self-care was very foreign to me when I started this journey. I think that was one of the good outputs of the pandemic for me, is that I became aware of self-care and started practicing it. And it made all of the difference in the world. In the beginning, I was very much like, I have to be a productive human being. I have to like go, go, go. I had the YouTube channel going. I wanted to be productive there. I honestly I did neglect myself. There were times where I was in tears because I couldn't get a video to post, or I was apologizing on the channel because I said I was going to post something on one day and I didn't. When I first started editing on a MacBook Air, and it's just slow. And so I remember I was going to California and I watched this channel, Lisa and Lindsay, which I think their channel now is Teddy Has Two Mums. I was like in tears, and she wrote in the comments like, it's okay, like you're on an air and it's slow, and it just was like, it made so much sense to me after I heard it, like after I read it and said it out loud. But in the moment I was just like, oh my God, I have to do this. Now I know it's for fun. I don't owe anybody anything on YouTube or otherwise. And like my first commitment is to myself, right? Put on your own, like on the plane, put on your own air mask first before you can save anyone else. So now I practice a lot of self-care and I love it. And I encourage anyone who's on the journey from the very, very beginning to practice self-care, whether it's like a long hot bath, doing your nails, a little eye mask, whatever it is, a long walk, a nice slow cooked meal, whatever it is that kind of lets you take a deep breath and take the edge off. I encourage everyone to do that as often as they can and as early as they can, because it can be a long journey. You don't know. And so you just want to, you know, pack all of the goodies for the ride.
All right, Tanika, family's got question number 3. Time management is critical when balancing IVF, personal life, and career. How did you maintain this balance? Any advice for career women seeking IVF?
So time management, I am very good at time management in general because I'm just a project manager really by birth. I feel like I was meant to be. You have to understand like what your priorities are. If I think of it like a project plan, you have to have the item as a thing that needs to be done on the list. So once you have that in your mindset to put yourself on the list, that helps. And then whatever else that needs to be done. And what doesn't need to be done. Sometimes it's like, what's a nice to have? Like, do you have to scrub the floor that night? Probably not. Do you need to take care of yourself? Probably. So just prioritizing what those things are. And then also just being mindful. There's a lot of appointments. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of medications. I set a lot of alarms, and I do a lot of just organizing what has to happen. Like, when does the medication have to happen? When does this meeting have to happen? And making sure, and I keep it on my work calendar because I don't know about you, but I have 2 different phones. I have one for work and I have one for personal. But anything that has to do with IVF goes on my work calendar because that some of it's happening in the daytime and I have to make sure meetings don't conflict. Do I move meetings at work to make an IVF appointment? No. But I do account for what do I have to do at work? Do I have time to travel to the clinic? And make sure that I'm on top of that. A lot of the stuff with the clinic is time dependent. It's time sensitive, but by day and not by hour. And luckily most clinics are open at the crack of dawn, so you can get up and go and take care of whatever you have to take care of. I will say in this part of my journey, I am working with a reproductive immunologist, and that is becoming challenging as far as scheduling, because one of the tests I have to leave the state to take the test. And so, but it's working out. It's stressing me out a little bit, but it's working out. So I just would take it as, be organized with it. It's not something you can be really casual about as far as like your appointments and your medication and the money part of it. You want to know, like, when is your money coming in? When does it have to go out? What is insurance covering? What is insurance not covering? I highly, highly recommend that people get very familiar with their benefits and have a good understanding. Because even when I talk to people on the phone about my benefits who work for my employer, sometimes they are misinformed about what is going on. So just make sure you have a good understanding of what is happening and can navigate through that part of it as well.
All right, Tanika, this is a good one. So advocating for self is critical in this journey as you are working with multiple doctors with varying perspectives. How did you choose your doctors? If you disagreed with one, how did you handle it?
This is an excellent question. How do you choose your doctors and how do you handle a disagreement? First of all, I love that you asked, how do you handle a disagreement? Because I think it's important that people know you don't always have to agree with your doctor. But let me answer your questions. First things first. My first doctor, I didn't really choose. The doctor was kind of chosen for me, per se, just because I was very naive and not well informed. So as part of my fertility benefits, we're required to go to certain clinics that are considered centers of excellence, or COE. So I got a list of COE clinics, and basically it was like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I think it was the one that was closest to my office, quite honestly. And so I went to see that doctor. From the very first visit, I got kind of a bad feeling about it, but I was excited just to be at the clinic. And so I kind of brushed it off. Follow your intuition, ladies. Follow your intuition. If you get a bad vibe, I'm not saying run immediately, but don't ignore it. The first doctor refused on the first visit that she would ever do an IVF with me unless I did donor eggs. And she was just very dismissive. I was 2 weeks after my 46th birthday when I went to see her. I understand now why she said it. I think the way she said it could have been improved. And also just to have a willingness to let me try once with my own eggs, I think would have been beneficial. But allegedly she was saving me money. Now I know she was saving her clinic statistics, right? It had nothing to do with my money, because why wouldn't they? They took my money for those IUIs. And IUIs had a lesser chance of working at that point at 46. The cutoff for IUIs, at least for my insurance, was 35. But I would say to any woman who is 42 or older, don't waste your time with IUIs. I mean, I actually say 37 or older, but I know some women want to give it a try, and there is a minimal chance of success. This is just my personal opinion. So I should have walked out of, had I known what I know now, I should have walked out of that clinic and found another doctor. I should not have done multiple IUIs. The IUIs, the way they did it, thank God for this community, the TTC community on YouTube and Instagram. They were not fully monitored. So my IUI, I never had a scan at the beginning of my cycle. I only had blood work. And then after that, I didn't have additional blood work. I only had scans. So there are points of information that we were missing to even make that IUI be successful, right? We didn't, when we started medicating me, we don't know if I had cysts, if whatever was going on, right? And so that was my first lesson. I will say I've had 3 doctors on this journey. I've been on this journey since 2017. It is now 2022. I've had 3 different doctors. I have had one doctor twice, and that's Dr. McConnell. So I went to Dr. McConnell. I definitely researched her. She was a woman of color, which was also attractive to me because sometimes you have a barrier with your doctors and you're not sure, is it a male-female thing? Obviously, my first doctor was a female, so it wasn't like we were both women, but she did talk down to me. I also was not an informed consumer, so I'll take the hit on that. I made it a point to be informed after that, and so I feel like I had a better rapport with Dr. McConnell, because not that we were equals, I'm not pretending like I went to medical school, but she didn't talk down to me, right? She was willing to partner with me on what my treatment was and willing to have a conversation with me. And that was huge. And so we did my first egg retrieval there and my first transfer at Columbia. The only reason that I left is I went to Share Fertility, and I had Dr. O. I can't remember his full last name, Dr. O. I had a good rapport with him. He was very like machismo, but also willing to work with me. They had a reputation for working with women of advanced maternal age and having their own eggs. And what I mean by that is they were willing to try some more unconventional things that Columbia wasn't, like Omnitrope, which was meant to help with the quality of eggs. And so I just wanted to be a little experimental with another clinic that was in network, because I know everyone is like, there's CHR here in New York. It was out of network for me. And so it was not even out of network. It was not a center of excellence, because out of network implies you can get reimbursed. Partially, this was not a center of excellence, so I would have been on my own 100% out of pocket. So I went to that clinic. And then honestly, I went back to Columbia when I was going to do donor eggs, because I was like, the only reason I left is because I was trying with my own eggs with someone who had a little more experience with older women. Once that was out of the equation, it was Dr. McConnell for the win. And so I went back. And also Columbia has a concierge donor program, meaning I tell them what they want. They give me what I want. They give me a list of donors because when I was at Share, I had started doing it and it was just a nightmare of like, I had to find the donor agency. My insurance only covered fresh donors. So that was a whole other hurdle. So yeah, I think in selecting your doctor, you want to find someone that you can talk to and someone that listens, like truly listens and is not dismissive. And I feel like my very first doctor was dismissive. The one at Share, there was nothing wrong with Dr. O. Like he left the practice though during the pandemic. And so when I came back after the pandemic, after I came back to New York, or not after the pandemic, we're still in the pandemic, but after I came back to New York and he was gone and I was having trouble finding like a place to get a donor, I was just like, why am I doing this? Let me go back to Dr. McConnell. I absolutely adore her.
Tanika, see, Bubbah's about to ask you. Right, Bubbah? You're about to ask the other question? Oh. Yeah. All right, Tanika, here we go. As a single mother by choice, what advice do you have out there for single women experiencing infertility whose clock is ticking and do not yet have a partner or a spouse?
There are two parts to this question that I want to address, because I am truly a single mother by choice because I'm not looking for a partner. And I understand there are other women who are single mothers by choice because they haven't found a partner, which I think there's a clear distinction. To either of those women, I would say, what are you waiting for? I think when you're single mother by choice because you're not looking for a partner, it becomes a little easier because I think, you know, you can decide to either preserve your eggs or you can decide to have egg retrievals and have them fertilized, right? If you're a single mother by choice, there's really no reason to wait to have them fertilized. And the thawing process, the vitrification process has a higher success rate for embryos than it does for eggs. If you are a woman hoping for a partner, I would say that is more critical, that you want to have your eggs preserved as young as possible. I will say the vitrification process for freezing eggs, like it's improved tenfold from what it was 10 years ago. I know there are a lot of women my age. Well, I'm not gonna say a lot of women. I've met several women my age who had their eggs frozen and during the freezing, the thawing process, the eggs did not make it. Whereas today, the process they use is much more efficient and you're more likely to be able to thaw those eggs. So luckily, all of them, the women that I know, they were able to still do a retrieval and use their own eggs. So that was not an issue for them. But if you're waiting, I think that's the hard part. If you are definitely sure that you want to have a partner, at least I would say save your eggs. There's a woman who did a live with me, Jada, who went to Barbados and has embryos there. And then she met her fiance. I think they're getting married later this year. And so now she has options, right? So she has those embryos that she created from donor sperm. And she can also try with her partner now. She does not have just eggs though. So maybe you do donor egg. I mean, I'm sorry, not donor egg. Maybe you do your own eggs and then half of them you mix with sperm. So you have the option in case you meet someone. I think that's the hard part, is like being in the limbo of like, will I meet someone in time? Will I not? So give yourself as many options as possible, you know, based on your money, based on your circumstances, all of those things. You have to figure out what works for you. But I would definitely say have some sort of plan, whether it's the eggs or the embryos. Have something, like don't leave it to chance, because you could meet the person of your dreams tomorrow and you want to be able to have options. But if you haven't done that, also don't panic if you just met someone. Definitely figure out where your fertility is and where your partner's fertility is. If nothing else, if you're like, oh, I don't want to save the eggs because I don't want to have to pay for them, or I don't want to have to destroy them, or I don't want to have to destroy embryos because that's a whole other sort of, you know, moral complexity. And so at least at the bare minimum, have an assessment of your fertility. Where do you stand? What is your AMH, right? Like, what is your antral follicle count? Like, just have a good understanding of like what your baseline is. And then you have more information to make a decision. Obviously, if it's low, if your numbers are not good and it's diminishing quickly, like your fertility is diminishing quickly, then you know you've got to take action. If it's fine, maybe you have a few years, maybe you're on a dating app, I don't know. But don't sit blindly and do nothing. Get some information and take some action. That's my recommendation.
All right, and here's one close to the last question. You could have given up a long time ago. What advice do you have for those who feel like giving up?
I want to reframe that a little bit. Instead of giving up, I want to reframe it as moving on. And I only want to reframe it because I want to leave space for those who have moved on to allow themselves grace, right? Giving up sounds like a potential failure, or your mettle was tested and you didn't have the fortitude. I think we have to all understand what our tolerance level is, whether that be emotional tolerance, psychological tolerance, financial tolerance. If you don't have enough money, you may have to decide to move on. You may have to move through another path, right? So I just want to be clear on that. I feel like some people have moved on, or they've resigned themselves to not have children or to adopt or something else. And it's not always a clear path, and it's not always straightforward, because also people will say, well, why don't you just adopt, or why don't you just do something else? And it's not necessarily that straightforward for either financial, psychological, or emotional reasons. And so I, at every turn, had to ask myself, what will I regret more? Will I regret if I don't do donor eggs, or if I do donor eggs, right? And so it's always like a check-in process of weighing of what will happen. And so I knew I would regret not doing donor eggs. And so that was my path forward, right? That's how I moved on. And then after I had the repeated failures for the frozen embryo transfers, I still had embryos on ice. So what was I going to regret more? Discarding my embryos or giving them a chance at life? So I knew I wanted to give them a chance at life. So then that was my path forward. I think each point, each sort of fork in the road, if you will, you have to assess, where are you? What can you handle mentally? What can you handle financially? What can you handle psychologically? You know, I mentioned I have an anxiety disorder. And so I think that would have driven me crazy to let my embryos go, because I always would have worried about what they might have been. There was that part of it. There was a financial hurdle in the sense that I was going to have to do without on some things. Not that I couldn't obtain the money, but it was going to have to be siphoned from somewhere else, right? And I knew I wasn't willing to take out my 401k for it, which ended up being a blessing in disguise because the economy is squat right now. That would have been a huge mistake. So I, you know, unfortunately, I'm not going to say I'm going broke, but my credit is not going to be as pristine coming out of this as it was going in. But you know what? Credit can be repaired. Am I going to regret it more if my credit score dropped and I have a baby, or I kept my credit score pristine and I have no baby? I mean, I think that was a no-brainer for me. So yeah, you just have to figure out what your tolerance is. And I prayed a lot and dug deep and definitely had my mettle tested and moved forward with what I ultimately could live with. What was I not going to regret, or what was I going to regret less, I guess. But I have no regrets on my journey. So I kept forward based on what would I regret less. Am I not going to move forward with this, or am I going to move forward with this? And I think it's easier when you frame it that way versus giving up. Does that make sense? If you are thinking about IVF, my advice is go for it. Do a lot of research, get all your information, find a reputable doctor. Don't just look at statistics, because they could be skewed for the patients they are not taking, right? The statistics are about the patients that they agreed to take and move forward with IVF. So it's a little nuanced. I would hop in chat rooms and get information from other women. There's resolve.org that has a lot of information on fertility and benefits and advocacy. Definitely hop on that website, get informed, and get to it. Don't waste another minute.
Right, Tanika, this is the last question. What advice do you have for anyone who is thinking about IVF? What are top 5 things that you wish anyone beginning this journey should know? What did you wish you knew?
What are the top 5 things I wish anyone beginning this journey would know? Number 1, know what your fertility status is. Have all of your testing done. What is your AMH? What is your antral follicle count? What is your lining looking like? Do you have fibroids? Just a total snapshot. That's the number 1 thing you should know, a total snapshot of what your fertility is looking like. 2, you have an impact on your health, your overall health. So whether that is supplements, whether that is eating food, whether that is exercising, you have an impact on that. So put your best foot forward. Do research on what is it. There's a great book. It Starts with the Egg by Rebecca Fett. I highly encourage anyone to read that book and get informed about how these different external factors are impacting your fertility and what you can do to change them. You can't change everything, but there are things you can change, like how much vitamin D are you getting? How many leafy green vegetables are you eating on a day? How many should you be eating? All those sorts of things, which ties back into number 1, have a good snapshot of have a good understanding of what your fertility snapshot is. And then 2, understanding what you do can impact that, i.e. improve what your snapshot is to a limited extent. You're not going to be 52 and taking enough supplements to improve your egg quality. So you got to be realistic about what you're doing. The 3rd thing I would say, learn how to be an advocate for yourself. You want to definitely have healthcare providers that you can partner with. And in order to partner, you have to be informed. So do a lot of research. And I mean like real research. Don't necessarily go into a bunch of forums and talk to women who are telling you you need to eat yams to improve your fertility. No shade, no tea for the women who are doing that, but that's not really going to be helpful as you advocate for yourself with your medical professionals, right? So you want to be able to speak their language, so to speak, and you don't have to understand everything. You don't have to know all the words. Obviously, you haven't gone to medical school, so they're not expecting you to have that same level of understanding as if they're talking peer to peer, but you want to be able to have intelligent conversations about realistic things like your antral follicle count and what that means and what you can expect for an egg retrieval. I see a lot of older women doing egg retrievals and then they're in tears because they get 7 eggs. I would have killed to have 7 eggs on a retrieval, right? So I think they just didn't have realistic expectations going in because they see these younger women going in and having 22 eggs. If you're in your 40s, you're not likely to have 22 eggs at a retrieval. So I think having that information is important. 4th thing, therapy. Make sure you have a really good therapist and preferably someone who understands the fertility journey. I think I probably went through 7, like no joke, 7 therapists throughout this process. And the hardest part was therapists who were not giving me space to grieve, because each time you go through a failed cycle, it's a loss. Like I had one female therapist who was always like, okay, what are the next steps? What are the next steps? And sometimes that works for people. That's not my jam. Like I didn't play sports. I don't need someone on the sidelines going, atta girl, get back in the game. Like that doesn't work for me. And so find a therapist that's compatible with your style and that allows you room to grieve and to move forward from there. I don't know, maybe the 5th therapist that I had was give yourself grace is what he taught me. And I had never heard that before. And that was huge for me because what I realized is I had been blaming myself, internalizing blame. You know, I'm too old, my eggs are too old, whatever that negative messaging that was going on in my head was. When he gave me permission to give myself grace, it freed up my mind to let that go. And it didn't matter what the root cause of the issue was, right? It just mattered that I needed to figure out how to move past it so that I could get my take-home baby. Hopefully that makes sense. And then, did I do 5? I think I owe you one more. I guess 5 is give yourself grace. It's really give yourself grace. Remember that you are doing everything that you can to get your take-home baby, and anything you've done in the past that was wrong, you did it with the best intention, right? We always are doing the best that we can with the information we have at the time. And so that helps me live without regret because I did the best that I could at the time. And so combining that with giving yourself grace, I think, or as a part of giving yourself grace is so key because you can't go back and do that. And again, like for me, focusing on what I can control, I can control my beliefs. I can control how I treat myself, how I like the self-talk that I give myself. And once I had the freedom to give myself grace, I was able to do a lot more positive self-talk. So I just encourage everyone to give yourself grace. I wish I had a better understanding of fertility overall. I think I just had that sort of rudimentary grade school understanding of fertility. You know, if a boy sneezes on me, I'm going to get pregnant. So I was in for a rude awakening that it would take me 5 years to have a sticky baby. I naively did not understand. And so I made choices that had I had better information, I would have made different choices, like with the IUIs, right? I now know that that was a complete waste of time at my age to be doing IUI, time that I cannot get back. And I probably at 46 had a better chance of a successful egg retrieval, early 46, right? Because remember, I started the journey 2 weeks after my 46th birthday. Had I gone straight into egg retrieval, I would have had a better chance of being successful with my own eggs. I also would have requested mini IVF, the lower dose IVF. I have since learned that when women are given higher doses of medication to stimulate their eggs, it makes the eggs a little wonky. And so making them wonky with the meds and also having older eggs is not really compatible with a successful outcome, right? And so doing lower dose, you're not destroying the little quality that the eggs may have, and it gives you a better chance of being able to successfully transfer those. And so I definitely would advocate for mini IVF. And I wish I knew that I did not have to trust all doctors, right? I think my very first doctor, I just took everything at face value, even though there was sort of this niggling feeling in the back of like, something is not quite right. And I know now that it was not right and I should have followed that intuition. So I think also I wish I knew that it's okay to follow my intuition. But, you know, the first thing is like, you don't have to trust all doctors. I now know that that first doctor was very much worried about her clinic's statistics. And so having me do my own eggs and transferring that for IVF was highly unlikely to be successful, and having that on their record would not be good for their statistics. So the advice that she gave me was more about the benefit to the clinic than the benefit to me as a patient. You want a doctor who is going to fight with you. You want a doctor who is going to advocate for you and say, yes, I believe in you. We have a plan. Let's execute this plan together. And so I would encourage everyone strongly to find a doctor who is going to fight for you, because if you are a woman of advanced maternal age, it is going to be a fight. It is a fight that will be worth it, but it is going to be a fight, and you need somebody who is going to lace up and get in that ring with you. All right, Kay, those are all of my answers. Hopefully you and your viewers found them useful. Once again, thank you so much for your videos, for your insight, for your wisdom. I hope many women come to your channel. I know that women who are on the verge are not sure if they want to move from their own eggs to donor eggs, and they have a doctor in their ear telling them just do donor eggs, they will find your videos very, very useful. I love how you went about your plan very systematically and were like, I'm going to do the mini IVF, I'm going to bank the eggs. Definitely makes sense to me. So hopefully it resonates with other women who are still young enough to activate that action plan and they take advantage of it. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing for the fertility community. We definitely need you. All right, I'm going to sign off like I always do. Baby, that's to us all.
Thank you, Tanika. Yay. Woohoo. Say thank you, Tanika. Say thank you, Tanika. please subscribe to Tanika's channel. Her link is below.
And please subscribe to our channel.
And thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope that you enjoy the video.